That was a nuclear detonation. As you saw, the damage from an explosion of that type is incredible. In the event of a full-scale war, it must be assumed that each base and major industrial complex will become a target. If an area is the target of a nuclear weapon, that area will be virtually destroyed. Serious as the immediate effects of a thermonuclear explosion may be, the delayed effects in the form of induced radiation at the site of the detonation and the far-reaching fallout will result in a much higher number of casualties and loss of human life. Indeed, it is possible that over 90% of casualties will be caused by fallout alone. Frequently overlooked is the fact that at least a 1-hour warning should be available if attack should come by manned bomber. And although an ICBM may arrive with little or no warning, precise accuracy between continents with such a weapon is difficult to achieve. It may easily be as much as 40 miles off target. With only this degree of accuracy, an entire city might survive the immediate effects, but not the lethal fallout. Thus, even in a large city, which may be a primary target, many hundreds of thousands may survive if shelters are available to protect from delayed radiation and the effects of possible secondary fires. On the other hand, it has been estimated that an attack limited to military objectives alone would kill 45 million Americans if we are not prepared to deal with fallout. Shelters on military installations and in cities are not designed as bomb or blast shelters, but rather as fallout shelters. In the event an attack on the United States should occur or be anticipated, all non-emergency essential personnel would be evacuated from military installations and released from their civilian jobs. This means simply that personnel who have no immediate responsibility will be free to leave the area under the supervision of the local civil defense director. Essential personnel, such as military, firemen, police, civil defense workers, and so forth, will be the only people who remain. All available communications will be used to notify people, such as sirens, telephones, word of mouth, and in the case of military installations, alert systems. Evacuation will allow you sufficient time to reach your home or shelter area. Fallout is minute radioactive particles resulting from the detonation of a nuclear weapon. Something like this model. It is nothing more than debris, such as dust, dirt, or parts of the vaporized casing of the weapon, which has become highly radioactive when the weapon is detonated. Should the particle lose its radioactivity, it becomes as harmless as any other piece of dirt. These radioactive particles would drift with the winds, settling over a large area. Wind is fallout's only means of transportation, and it can travel only as fast as the winds can carry it. Subsequently, should a detonation take place 150 miles from your area, and the winds be blowing 30 miles per hour in your direction, fallout would reach you in approximately 5 hours. Your prime concern now should be to find shelter. You must expect to remain in a shelter for a period of up to 2 weeks. Should a public shelter exist in your town or city, be prepared to use it. It was designed for your use. Public shelters are equipped with such items as radiation detection and measuring devices, food and water, and other items essential to sustained life. If a public shelter does not exist, you must be prepared to take action on your own to provide shelter for you and your family. An average home is not considered a good fallout shelter, but if this same home has a basement, it can be converted into a shelter rapidly and cheaply, one which will prove most adequate. When a building is surrounded by fallout, the radiation moves in a straight path from the emitting particles of radioactive debris. Your greatest protection is provided by shielding. As you can see from this drawing, not much shielding is between an individual on either the first or the second floor and the radioactive particles. The safest place on either the first or second floor is the center of the building. But by using the basement, Sufficient shielding can be placed between you and the source of radiation to allow you to survive. You can improve on the safety of the basement with very little effort. This can be done by adding a lean-to affair against one wall made of planks, plywood, or any material available. The object is to place as much material between you and the fallout as possible. Your local civil defense authorities can furnish you with booklets that will give you many ideas on types of home shelters. After construction of this lean-to, you can add other materials such as sandbags, bricks, wood, or any other material available. Once you enter the shelter, do not leave it except when absolutely necessary. In order for you to exist for a 2-week period in your shelter, you must have certain items. Among these are food, water, heat, light, medical supplies, and other items we will discuss at length. First is know your signals. A 3 to 5 minute steady blast on a siren means an attack against the United States is expected. This is a yellow alert. This is the time to prepare. A wailing or warbling siren means an attack against the United States is imminent or underway. This is a red alert. Take shelter. Next is cooking, heating, and lighting. As soon as an attack against the United States occurs, all power and light companies will shut down to prevent ruptured gas and electric lines causing secondary fires over an extremely wide area, should your city become a target. Therefore, you must be prepared to operate with no commercial power. Have available such items as extra candles and matches, flashlights, oil or wood-burning stoves, and an adequate supply of fuel. Remember to provide adequate ventilation for stoves of this nature. A hand blower is a good item for this purpose. Next is food and water. You must have a 2-week supply of food and water. 10,000 calories will be adequate for an adult during an inactive 2-week period. Select familiar foods and foods that will last for months without refrigeration and can be served without cooking. Suggestions: canned meats, fish, poultry, beans, peas, and fruit, cereal and tinned baked goods, cheese spreads, peanut butter, and jellies, crackers, also evaporated or dried milk. Pick cans and packages of a size suitable to your family's needs for one meal. This prevents spoilage and offers you greater variety. Keep all foods in their original containers. Those that do not come in cans should be wrapped and tape sealed in plastic bags. Write the date of purchase on cans or packages and use the oldest purchases first. After a nuclear attack, food stored indoors should be safe to eat. That is especially true of food in freezers and refrigerators, which of course should be eaten first. Eat all perishable foods first, since gas and electricity will normally be cut off. Food is still edible even when moldy. Sour milk is usable. Fruits and vegetables with rotten spots cut out are safe to eat. If they have been exposed to fallout, wipe, wash, and peel them, disposing of wash water outside the shelter. Throw out canned foods if bubbles appear in the juices, even though they smell all right. In an emergency, most canned and packaged animal foods can be eaten without harm. Water is more vital than food. Humans can live on a quart of water or other fluids a day, but an allowance of a gallon is far more comfortable, especially in a warm shelter. Store water in 5-gallon or larger containers to conserve space. If you use small glass containers, seal them well and pack them with newspapers or wadding to prevent breakage. Some may want to test their stored water for smell and taste every 3 months, but it's not necessary for health. Odorous as it might become, it will still be usable in an emergency. Announcements on your radio may tell you whether local water supplies are safe. If they are not, you can conserve a considerable safe water supply in your house by using the water in your hot water tank and the water in the flush tank of your toilet. Unless authorities have pronounced it safe, try to avoid using water from outside the house or from open sources, such as lakes or reservoirs, after the attack, without purifying it. Germs or radioactive material, or both, may get into the water. Purifying water with iodine or household bleach will destroy the germs. Radiation in itself does not affect water. It is only if the radioactive particles themselves get into the water that the water becomes dangerous. There are effective ways to decontaminate water containing radioactive particles. The particles can be removed by the simple filter process with cloth or paper, or by running the water through one of the devices that are sold to soften water for home use. The next essential shelter item is a radio. Each shelter should possess a radio that does not depend on a commercial source of power. A battery-operated radio is suggested. This will be your only contact with the outside world, your only contact with civil defense. Not only will a radio keep you posted on everything you need to know, it will also aid in keeping peace of mind. Your Conrad stations at 640 and 1240 are marked on your radio dial. Dial this frequency during the emergency and do not move your dial. Should the voice fade from your radio, do not change the dial. Conrad has switched to a different transmitter to prevent enemy missiles or bombers from getting a fix on a particular transmitter. The announcer will return to your station within a few minutes. When it comes time to evacuate your area after the fallout has decayed sufficiently, this is the way you will receive your instructions. A radio is very essential to any shelter operation. Another essential item is a first aid kit. A first aid kit containing such items as bandages, iodine, antibiotics, aspirin, tranquilizers, and sleeping pills is very necessary. People will be injured in the shelter the same way they are anywhere else. Each individual in a family should be familiar with the contents of the first aid kit and have a working knowledge of basic first aid techniques. Tranquilizers and sleeping pills should be kept available. Adequate sedation and tranquilization may change a 2-week restriction in a shelter from an impossible situation into one that is least tolerable. Children should be kept as quiet as possible. Using sleeping pills for the first few days will help the children adjust to this peculiar situation. One of the most important items in any shelter is recreation and morale supplies. Recreation in a cramped shelter is important to both physical and mental health. It is strongly recommended that such items as reading material, consisting of books and magazines, be available. The Bible might be the most important book you could take with you. Games and toys should be made available for the children. Games that require concentration will keep the children interested for hours. For the adult, don't forget toilet articles. For the ladies, take along lipstick and makeup. Not only will it lift your spirits, but Dad's as well. By the same token, Dad should have a razor available. It is extremely important to avoid friction between individuals at a time like this. Problems that would be laughed off under normal circumstances will assume gigantic proportions in this situation. This is the reason recreation and morale supplies are stressed so strongly. We must have the means to relax and relieve the tensions that will naturally build up at a time like this. Do everything in your power to provide adequate facilities to allow each member to relax and enjoy himself as much as possible under these trying circumstances. You must do fire prevention housekeeping in your shelter. You must eliminate the possibility of fire in your shelter. You will, in all likelihood, have open flames burning. Do not have fluttery curtains or oily rags around. Check your shelter frequently to avoid building up trash that might ignite spontaneously. In simple language, keep it clean and neat. Sanitation plans and equipment. It is extremely important to make adequate plans to dispose of human waste in your shelter. This can best be accomplished by use of chemical toilets. Chemical toilets can be procured through commercial sources at a reasonable cost and will serve the purpose most adequately. You can get by without toilets by using plastic bags or pails, but remember, you must remove this human waste from your shelter immediately to prevent the possibility of disease. This means you must on occasion leave your shelter and go outside. But while you have been outside, you have picked up radioactive debris on your shoes and clothing. When you re-enter your shelter, you must change clothing. Have adequate clothing available for all members. When clothing becomes contaminated, it should be sealed inside plastic cans or bags and placed outside the shelter. By wearing contaminated clothing, you would spread the contaminated particles throughout the shelter, endangering everyone. Also, extra items of clothing, such as underwear, should be available for all members. All families have old clothing they no longer wear or hanging around their home. This clothing will serve the purpose most adequately. When it comes time to evacuate your shelter, as I stated before, you will be notified over your Conelrad station. Civil Defense will advise you what route to use and what area to evacuate to. Be prepared to follow these instructions to the letter. Be sure your automobile is capable of transporting you to the evacuation area. Never allow your gas tank to become less than half full. With a half tank of gas, you can go a couple of 100 miles. With an empty tank of gas, you can't cross town. Also, you should have checked when you entered your shelter to see that your automobile was locked and all vents and windows were closed. If you have a garage, you should have locked the car in the garage to prevent it from being stolen. It might have been a good idea to remove the rotor from the distributor or some other essential piece of equipment. This would prevent anyone from stealing the car. Any head of a household should have a plan in which each family member participates. You might know everything to do under nuclear war conditions, but it's very possible your wife and children do not. So if something happens and you're not home, you have done nothing to save their lives. This is the reason a family plan is so important. Let each member participate actively. Assign each member a task and be sure they know how to complete that task. Be sure that each member can survive without the other members available. Then you can be sure at least part of your family survived. The Department of Defense, Office of Civil Defense, publishes a booklet entitled Fallout Protection: What to Know and Do About Nuclear Attack. You can obtain a copy of this booklet from your local Civil Defense office. It is the best book of its type ever published. I strongly urge you to get a copy, and after you read it, keep it available for ready reference. A copy placed in your fallout supplies would be a good idea. Also, Civil Defense is your best reference on all questions of survival under fallout conditions. Should any questions arise in your mind, contact your local Civil Defense office. They will answer any questions you might have, and in addition, advise you on correct procedures under any emergency situation. This, then, is basically how to survive under fallout conditions. There is no secret to survival. If you follow these simple instructions I have laid down and the advice you receive from Civil Defense, you can survive. 90% of survival under any situation is common sense. If you keep your head, know what you intend to do, be prepared to act, and don't wait until it's too late, you can and will survive.